Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm looking at BT05, and BT05 adds a lot of new and powerful cards to update some current and existing decks, and one of those decks that I'm looking to update is going to be the Ancient Greymon deck. So Ancient Greymon has been a rather interesting deck ever since he was first released. He had this new promo that came out along with BT04 in English that really helped to push the card along, and he's been getting some small support here and there. And with BT05 adding a lot more generic Greymon support, there's just a whole bunch of different things that you could do with him just because we have that Greymon support to think about. But regardless, Ancient Greymon is for the most part just going to be a carbon copy of what Ancient Garurumon is doing, except adding his own twists and his own flair. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gigimon. So DP boosting is a really important thing in the deck, and not to mention the Digitama slot is a little bit on the harder side to use considering we're trying to rely more on the warp from the promo Agunimon, so we can't rely on a lot of the things that we were relying on before, making our Digitama slots a little bit harder to utilize, but Gigimon thankfully is still one of the best Digitamas we have, just because his ability is rather generic, where during your turn, while there are 5 or more cards in the opponent's trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, making whatever we're going to be swinging with that much stronger in the mid to late game. And then the 5th Digitama could really be anything you feel like you want to use. I just feel like for what this deck is trying to do, Koromon is still just one of the best Digitamas just because the BT05 Koromon is acting as a solid card draw engine, except the only problem with Koromon is it's relying solely on Greymons attacking, and we do have just a couple of Greymons that we're going to be attacking with, and it does have a little bit of anti-synergy based on how the promo Agunimon works, so it's not necessarily the best Digitama, but having some access to some card draw is better than having nothing at all, thus making Koromon a really good Digitama to be using as the 5th, but again, it could really be anything you feel like you want to use. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT01 version of Agumon, and this Agumon is looking to be pretty good because it has this nice on-play ability where we get to check the top 5 cards of our deck, and then we get to add 1 Tamer from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this is just a really efficient way at just trying to dig your deck up for some Tamers, and we have a whole bunch of Tamers that we want to be playing and utilizing, so this Agumon is just looking to be a really good card at digging for our Tamers. Speaking of digging for our Tamers, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of Flamemon. So Flamemon is another card where it has a nice on-play ability where we get to check the top 3 cards and add a Digimon with hybrid in its form and or 1 red Tamer card from among them, place it into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this is another card that's also allowing us to try to dig for our Tamers, but on top of it digging for our Tamers, we also could be digging for our hybrid Digimon, which we are running a couple of different hybrid Digimon. So Flamemon is just really good because he also has the potential of hitting both, and then both go into our hand, and we just want to try to find and dig for our cards as consistently as we possibly can to just make our deck as, consistent as it possibly could be. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the BT05 version of Agumon, and this Agumon is another consistency tool where we're using him for his on-play ability to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck. Then we get to add 1 Digimon with Greymon in its name and 1 Digimon with Omnimon in its name from among them and put it into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this is just really in here to try to dig out our Greymons. The most important Greymon that we're going to be trying to dig out is obviously going to be Ancient Greymon, but the fact that we also could be digging for our Omnimons just make this card a little bit more valuable, and we could also play more Greymons if we really felt like we wanted to, and we do have a couple of Greymons that we could be using, so this is still just a pretty good card to, again, just try to help with the overall consistency of the deck. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the starter deck Agumon, and this Agumon is really only in here just because it has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So we're just using it for a generic DP boost to make whatever Digimon we're digivolving into that much stronger. Next, on our level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agunimon. So this is the BT04 version of Agunimon, and this Agunimon is really good just because he has this nice ability where we could Digivolve this card from our hand onto one of our red tamers as if that red tamer was a level 3 Digimon. So this card is really good because it's just very efficient at trying to help close out the games where we're just trying to deal a whole bunch of security damage as quickly as we possibly can. Then if we just have a red tamer sitting on our field, then we could use Agunimon to just Digivolve on top of it and swing right away to try to end the game that much more efficiently with. So Agunimon is just a really decent card at trying to close out games. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Greymon. So this is the promo Greymon, but this Greymon could really be any kind of Greymon you feel like you want to be using. I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, this Greymon is really good because he has this nice ability native to him, where during your turn, while this Digimon has Agumon in its Digivolution source, then it gains Security Attack +1. So we are playing quite a bit of different Agumons, so it doesn't necessarily matter which Agumon we go on top of. Just the fact that we're going on top of an Agumon means that this Greymon is going to gain Security Attack +1, allowing us to deal a lot more extra damage really quickly, and that's all we're trying to gain out of the card. So one of the best stacks that we could form with this Greymon to try to ensure that he's going to live through both security checks, because, you know, he could die on the first check, but it doesn't matter. We just want him to try to deal as much security damage as we possibly can, but the ideal stack is going to be Gigimon and Agumon, so that way he could try to gain as much DP as he possibly can to ensure his survival. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agunimon. So this is the promo Agunimon, and this Agunimon is really good just because it's helping with playing our Ancient Greymon. So what this Agunimon is doing is he has the native ability of when attacking, this Digimon can Digivolve into an Ancient Greymon from our hand by paying 2 memory and ignoring its Digivolution requirements. And then if you do use this ability, then you have to delete the Digimon at the end of the turn. So this does create a little bit of anti-synergy with some of our cards because the when attacking ability is allowing you to Digivolve. Thus, if we're trying to rely on when attacking abilities to interact with our Greymons, then those abilities, the timing will miss. So that is a little bit unfortunate, but the fact that we could use this card to basically just hold them in raising, move them out, swing, and warp right into an Ancient Greymon is looking to be really powerful just because Ancient Greymon is just a really strong Digimon in his own right. And then if we don't feel like using his warp ability, then we could tempo up into an Ancient Greymon just because he has a nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when Digivolving this Digimon into an Ancient Greymon from your hand, then you get to reduce its Digivolution cost by 2. So this is just really good because if we don't feel like warping, then we just are able to tempo up into an Ancient Greymon, and it makes the Ancient Greymon more efficient to Digivolve into than he normally would be, making him just easier to play overall. Next, onto the level 5s, I'm just going to be running 4 copies of Aldamon. So Aldamon is really the only level 5 we need in this deck. I was considering about playing some Metal Greymons and try splashing in a Metal Greymon package, but I just felt like for what the deck is trying to do, we're just trying to deal as much damage as quickly as possible, and there is no better level 5 in the game for red than Aldamon. So what Aldamon is doing is he just natively has Security Attack +1, which is, again, just really good because it allows us to apply that much more pressure onto the opponent's security, trying to get rid of it as quickly as we possibly can to try to end the game as quickly as we possibly can. And then on top of that, he also has another ability where during your turn, while this Digimon has a hybrid in its Digivolution source or a red tamer, then it gains plus 4,000 DP. So basically, the turn you're going to be swinging with him, there's a very high chance that he's going to be swinging for at least 11k, if not even more, because we could go like Agumon, then Agunimon into Aldamon. So that could be a potential line, and then he'll end up being 12k, or with Gigimon, he could be 13k, or any other buffs that you could be running could boost him even higher. So Aldamon is just looking to be a very powerful level 5 that's almost acting like a level 6 to try to deal as much damage as we possibly can. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm just going to be running 4 copies of Ancient Greymon. So Ancient Greymon is just a really powerful level 6. Ordinarily, he does Evo for 5, but thanks to the promo, we have alternate ways to be playing him, so we could either warp into him for 2, or if we're just tempo Evoing all the way up into him, then his evolution cost is reduced by 2, making him Evo for 3, and that's just really good considering we are going to be running memory fixing tamers in the deck to ensure that our memory is always going to start at 3, making sure that we could always play Ancient Greymon. So regardless on how we use the card, he's just looking to be really, really powerful just because of his native ability, where during your turn, for each Digimon in his Digivolution source with Greymon in its name or hybrid in its form, this Digimon gains Security Tech +1. So if we tempo all the way up into him from, let's just say, our rookie, then he's going to gain Security Tech +2, just because obviously your rookie might not be a hybrid, but if it is, then it's going to gain an additional Security Tech, so it could be Security Tech +3. But regardless, he's going to at least be gaining 1, if not 2 security attacks, and that's just a lot of damage to be doing all at once really, really quickly. So he's just looking to be a fantastic card to try to help close out the game with, just because the main line of play is you're going to raise out your Agunimon, swing with the promo Agunimon, trigger his ability, pay 2, warp into Ancient Greymon, which again is also really powerful because if the memory does go over onto the opponent's turn, then you still are able to get the attack off, which is again really, really good. But regardless, just being able to raise up, swing, and be able to do at least 2 to 3 security checks is looking to be really, really good, just because that's a lot of early game aggression that the opponent might not be able to anticipate or accommodate for. And then on top of that, he also has a nice on-delete ability where when he's deleted, you get to play 1 red level 4 or lower Digimon with hybrid in its form from your hand for free. So this is really good just because, again, we're playing a whole bunch of low-level hybrids. So if you want, you could use this ability to just bring out another Agunimon, so that way you could swing and warp again. You could bring out the other Agunimon from BT04 just because it's a hybrid, or you could bring out Flamon to try to help dig for more cards and have a level 3 on the field. So those are the 3 primary targets for his on-delete ability, but the fact that he does have an on-delete ability that basically replaces himself is really good because there's a high chance that he could hit some removal in security and then he'll get deleted, but if you're warping, then he's going to get deleted anyway, so it's not like it matters, and then you get another body on top of it out of this card, so he's just looking to be a very powerful card to be playing with overall. And then the only level 7 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Omnimon. So this is the BT05 Omnimon, and this Omnimon is really good because he has the Blitz ability. So when you Digivolve up into him, he's going to be gaining the Blitz ability, which allows him to attack even when the memory is over on the opponent's side. So if you swing and warp and it's still your turn, then you could use Blitz Omnimon to gain the Unsuspend ability when you Digivolve up into him, so that way you could actually use the Blitz ability to swing out into the opponent's security, and this ability could help close out the game, because if Ancient Greymon just busts through all of the opponent's security, then Digivolving up into Blitz Omnimon could just close out the game. And then he also has this another really good ability where during all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete this card, return him to the hand or deck, then you could prevent him from leaving the field by trashing a level 6 in his inheritable sources. So this is just really good just because it is acting as some form of protection, and some protection is better than no protection. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Atomic Inferno. So Atomic Inferno is a really good card for this deck, and what this card is doing is it has a really low play cost. So if our memory is at 3, then we could feel free to use that 1 memory for setting up Atomic Inferno. And what is making Atomic Inferno so powerful is the fact that it has the main ability where one of your Digimon with hybrid in its form gets plus 3000 DP and security tech +1, and when this Digimon is blocked, you gain 3 memory for the turn. So those are just 3 very powerful things that you could be using, and then you could use it on Ancient Greymon because the ideal line of play to use this card is to just have Agunimon come out of raising while you're at 3 memory. Use Atomic Inferno on the promo Agunimon, so that way he's going to gain all of the buffs, and then when you swing with the promo Agunimon, you're going to be warping into Ancient Greymon, and all of those buffs will retain on Ancient Greymon. So that's just a really powerful combo to be using, and it's just looking to be very, very strong on top of the fact that it also has a nice security ability where all your Digimon gain security attack +1 until the end of your next turn. So if we're able to form a really go-wide board, then we could use that board to just have lots of potential damage onto the opponent, and we could use this ability to also help close out the game just because they might not be able to stop all of that damage. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Trident Revolver. So Trident Revolver is another pretty decent option card for red. Its main ability allows you to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and then we get to play 1 Tamer card from our hands that costs 4 or less for free. So that's just looking to be pretty good, just because most of the time we're going to be targeting the opponent's blocker, so that way when we swing the next turn, we won't have a blocker in the way to stop us, but being able to delete Digimon with 6,000 DP gives us quite a variety of different options. We could delete some really weak level 5s, or we could delete all the way up to some really strong level 4s. So we have just a wide variety of targets to choose from, but the main idea on why we're running this card is to delete one of the opponent's Digimon and be able to play our Tamers that much more efficiently, which is just really good considering its security ability activates its main ability, so it's just also very threatening in the security as well. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is just the best red removal option we have in the game, so why not run it? Next, on to the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. So Tai Kamiya is a pretty interesting Tamer to be running in this deck. So what this card is doing primarily is the fact that we're using him as a red Tamer, and he's a memory fixing Tamer. So if our memory is ever less than 3, then he's always going to hard set it to 3, which is really good because we're relying on 3 memory to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can. And then he also has another ability where at the start of your turn, all of your red Digimon with 4 or more Digivolution sources gain security attack +1. So this is kind of awkward considering we're just trying to warp all the way up into Ancient, which means we're not having lots of inheritable sources in them, which means Tai Kamiya is almost never going to be triggering, but the fact that he still could trigger is why we still want to run the card. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Marcus Daemon. So Marcus Daemon is another really interesting Tamer to be running in the deck. Again, he's fulfilling that same memory fixing Tamer that Tai was doing, so just having more memory fixers is just really good. And then on top of that, his own ability is during your turn, when one of your Digimon with Greymon in its name attacks, then you get to suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. So this is really good, again, if we're able to just tempo all the way up into our Ancient Greymon, just because we'll be able to swing with our Ancient Greymon and gain the memory. It's also really good on our Champion Greymon, or if you're running any Ultimate Greymons, it's really good on those as well, just because it'll allow us to gain the memory there. But it's really awkward because when we're swinging with the Promo Agunimon, we're missing the timing in order for Marcus to trigger, just because the Ancient Greymon will come in already attacking. So it is a little bit unfortunate with that, but the whole idea of using this card is mostly just because it's a memory fixing Tamer. And then the last Tamer and last card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Tai Kamiya. So this is the starter deck version of Tai Kamiya, and we're playing this card just because it's a very cheap and efficient Tamer to hard play. So we just like the fact that he has a low play cost, and he also has a very nice ability where during your turn, all of your Digimon get plus 1000 DP. So this is just a static buff that affects all of our Digimon, so that way all of the Digimon on our field are going to be as powerful as they possibly could be. So this is just adding to the overall DP of our Digimon, which is just a really good thing to do, on top of being a very efficient Tamer for Agunimon to go on top of. And then there is just a whole bunch of other cards that you could use with the deck, all depending on how you want to build and what you actually feel like using. So some other really interesting rookies that you could be playing is Agumon Expert to double down on the Agumon synergies. So he has an on-play ability where you could just bring back an Agumon from your trash into your hand, so that way you could reuse your Agumons. And then another really good Agumon you could consider using is going to be the Promo Agumon. Well, this is the second Promo Agumon, and this Agumon interacts with Greymons by giving them a plus 2000 DP. but considering in my main build I'm running more hybrids rather than Greymons, I just felt like the starter deck one was better. And then on top of that, you also just have a slew of different Greymons that you could be running. So some of the best Greymons that you could be running is going to be the Security Greymon, just because he's a security Digimon. We're an aggro deck, so it's a good idea to sometimes include security Digimon, so that way when they're aggressing onto you, then the Digimon just could pop out of nowhere, and then you could use that Digimon to aggress onto the opponent. And then on top of that, you also have Geo Greymon if you want to run some Digiburst, just because most of the time your low-level inheritables aren't really mattering. So you could use this as some decent form of removal for the opponent's low-level Digimon. And then on top of that, you also have Greymon from BT05. He's just a really good tempo card because we're using so many different Agumons. He'll just gain us a memory when we Digivolve him on the field. And then he also just helps DP boost our Greymons also, which could matter for our Ancient Greymon. And then we also have the starter deck Greymon, which is just another really fantastic Greymon just because he generically gives security tech +1. So you could use this with either Aldemon to basically make Aldemon swing for 3 security checks, or you could use this with Ancient Greymon, which will give him an additional 2 security checks because he is counting as a Greymon towards the ability. So that's just looking to be some really good synergy there. Then if you just want another hybrid Digimon, we could consider running Burning Greymon. No, he is not considered a real Greymon, but this card is still just interacting with all of our hybrid support. So that's just looking to be pretty good there. Then we do have some really powerful level 5s if you want to include some different level 5s and try to focus the deck a little bit differently. So you could run the Metal Greymon from BT01. Then you could consider Metal Greymon from BT03. Then you could consider running Rise Greymon, just because Rise Greymon allows us to use his Digiburst ability to just play our Tamers more efficiently, which is just really good, and he has nice when attacking ability where if we have a Tamer in play, then one of our opponent's Digimon gets minus 2000 DP for the turn. We don't necessarily really care about this ability. It's nice to have sometimes because it could pick off the opponent's rookies, but we're just using him to just try to consider playing our Tamers more efficiently in a different way. And then you also have Metal Greymon Alteris mode. So Metal Greymon Alteris mode is just another really strong Metal Greymon to be considering if you're playing with Metal Greymon synergy. You could also consider running the starter deck Metal Greymon just because he has a nice inheritable ability that you want also. So there's just a ton of different Metal Greymons and Greymons you could be running as a whole. Then some really powerful option cards to consider for the deck is going to be a Delicate Plan. So you could use a Delicate Plan in a very similar way that you could use Atomic Inferno. Just its 1 cost to hard play is really good, so you could use it preemptively to make sure when your Ancient Greymon is going to be swinging, he's going to swing as safely as he possibly can, turning off the opponent's options from their security. Then if you are going to be playing lots of Greymon synergies or Greymon support, you also have Transcendent Sword to basically act as a second Gaia Force, where it's just acting as some really powerful removal. Then if you are doubling down on some of the more aggressive side of the deck and you're going to be running lots of Agumons, you have the nice unique option of Tai You Sure Have Gotten Big, where you could use this card to act as some extra card draw. And then we have Nokia to think about. So Nokia is just another really good card just because we're interacting with Agumons and Greymons and potentially Omnimons as well. And then if we just want another Tamer just to try to have a decent way of gaining lots of memory, Tai and Met is just another really strong Tamer. It also interacts with Omnimons, which you could go heavier into or you could choose not to go heavier into. But either way, Tai and Met is really good because for the opponent just having a level 6 on their field, gaining 2 memory is just very, very powerful, especially if we have multiple of these on the field. Then we could gain lots of memory for doing literally nothing. But for the most part, this is just my interpretation on how Ancient Greymon wants to be played. It is just a more aggressive deck that just wants to try to deal as much security damage as quickly as it possibly can, so that way we could use a lot of our Digimon to close out the games in some rather interesting ways. And then on top of that, there is a distinct lack of blockers, and the reason for this is because we are an aggressive deck, and blockers will actively slow us down on top of slowing the opponent down, and we are just, an aggro deck, so we want to finish things as fast as we possibly can. So that's why I felt like there was no need to include blockers in the deck. But this is a rather fun and interesting deck to be playing with, and it can produce some really good results in the right hands with the correct build. Not saying that this build is bad, but I generally like it when people iterate and figure out what they want out of the deck, so that way they could play what they're comfortable with. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.